You're listening to the Behind Every Employer podcast with your hosts Anson Green and Jeffrey Abramowitz. On the Behind Every Employer podcast, we sit down with future-focused employers and innovators who are advancing talent development for the frontline workforce that drives business. These leaders are challenging the status quo of education and training and delivering scalable solutions. Discussions cross the intersections of adult education, digital resiliency, training innovations, and other topics important to the new American workforce. This podcast is being brought to you by the Coalition on Adult Basic Education and sponsored by EngGen, a carefree-focused virtual English language platform for organizations and employers working with immigrants and refugees. Listen to the Behind Every Employer podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and you can find us at coag.org. And now, here are your hosts, Anson Green and Jeffrey Abramowitz.
Hello there. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Jeffrey. It's been a while since we've seen each other. How's your summer been?
My summer's been great. My keeping super busy, but this is my favorite time. Like, we get together, we get to talk workforce development, and we always between you and I, we always seem to capture some just amazing people that we get on this podcast. I'm super excited about tonight's show.
Yeah, we got a great show, and I'm glad. For me, summer's winding down. It's the end of we're in fall, but it's still in the mid 90s here in San Antonio. So that's winding down for us here in Texas. One thing I wanted to mention to the listeners too, getting a lot of requests to find out more about the podcast, and I wanted to just remind everybody you can check out the website behindeveryemployer.org. And you can find information on the podcast as well as how to access it. And then it's on all of the major podcast apps. So just go search it out, Behind Every Employer, and you can subscribe to that and get easy access to these wonderful shows. But we are really going to be busting at the seams tonight in terms of a team. We've got 4 guests on tonight. I think this is a Behind Every Employer record. And it's going to be a really great show. Representing a sector we haven't featured yet, the retail and grocer market. So I'm real excited about what we got today, and the guests are just fantastic. So let me tell you about it a little bit. We have a real deep bench of experts that represent the retail and grocer sector today. Mike Hendry is the Executive Vice President of Merchandising and Marketing at the Northgate Gonzalez Market, which is California's premier Latino-themed grocery chain. He leads the growing social media and digital footprint at Northgate, and also leads a team responsible for developing and growing the Northgate Market Mercado storefront and customer experience. So with Mike, we also have joining Kathy Friel from Northgate, who's the Director of Learning and Development, and she brings a great variety of experience leading teams in areas of human resource, learning, and development. And then joining the Northgate team is Sheree Phipps, the founding director of the Retail Management Certificate Program at an industry-driven, competency-based dual credit program that's offered at 100 approved community colleges and is nationwide accessible online. So we've got this kind of business-focused sector and a certification program in the sector, and then rounding out, because we are Behind Every Employer and we're always going to be focusing on that entry-level, lower-skilled workforce, we have Anna Negrescu from the National Immigration Forum. She's the Vice President of Business Engagement. Anna and I talk frequently because of her role there. And she works closely with employers to promote immigrant inclusion at the work site. Anna leads English at Work, the forum's industry-focused, contextualized ESL learning program for frontline workers. And she's got sites, much like the Northgate team here, all across the country. So we're going to hear a lot more about that program today and how it's being contextualized and used in the grocer market. So let's get started here with questions.
Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to start with Sheree here, and I want to begin with you. So you're the founding director of the Retail Management Certificate Program at Western Association of Food Chains. Can you tell us a little bit about the certificate and the history of it, and what problems you were trying to solve for retail and grocers for the industry?
Sure, absolutely. Well, the grocery industry and really the entire retail sector is really low overall education beyond high school. And it's in the 20 some years that we've been working with this retail management certificate program, we've hardly changed that. So around 30% of the industry actually have an associate degree or higher.
Wow.
And so initially, our opportunity was to bring a community college program in that was extremely relevant and focused on the kinds of knowledge, skills, and abilities people need to move their careers forward. So frontline workers, middle management inside a store, and helping them get into store manager positions and beyond using this college program. And so a lot of the problems that we were encountering, or the challenges really, are in helping people decide that they're interested in going to college, because traditionally college has been sort of gen ed, the kind of stuff that you don't feel like you're going to use tomorrow when I hit the ground running in my job. And so we really wanted to pick courses and content and customize it around foundational business acumen that was extremely applicable every day on the job. And that helped us get people who are working for us to raise their hand to say, maybe I do want to go to school. So that's been the thing that has helped change sort of the career trajectory and even the education pathway for a huge portion of our industry.
Fantastic. Yeah, when I was prepping for our discussion, I was just really impressed with kind of the reach of the certificate, and then the delivery, it being available online, really helps meet that the demands of the industry in terms of just time and place and getting education done in the busy retail and grocery world. So really applaud you for those efforts. So tell me, what's the response been from grocers and retailers to the certificate?
Well, in the grocery portion of the retail sector, there is a huge focus on advancing our industry through education and leadership. The nonprofit association that is the driver behind it is called the Western Association of Food Chains. And it's got at least 45 different leaders, such as Mike Hendry, who's joining us today, that serve on the board. And each one of them is extremely passionate about it. So you'll see major chains, regional chains, and smaller local chains like Northgate Gonzalez Markets across the nation that are using it to upskill their entry-level and mid-level management inside the stores.
Fantastic. Well, this is a good backdrop and kind of the history, but now we can move to Mike and really get into kind of on the ground usage of the certificate and what they're doing at the market. So, Mike, you're one of the retailers who's adopted the Retail Management Certificate Program, and you've situated it into a really compelling and broader upskilling and certification set of offerings to reach really a wide range of employees at the Northgate markets. This includes employees that are still learning English, which we're going to hear more about in a second. But I would like you to just tell our listeners a little bit about the Northgate markets and the chain's philosophy related to developing your team members.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having us again, Anson and Jeffrey. It's a pleasure to be here and let everybody learn a little bit about some of the great things we're doing as a team. But I'll start by telling you a little bit about Northgate. We're a premier Mexican food retailer located here in Southern California. We're also having our own chilly 95-degree fall weather as well. But we were established here 42 years ago by an immigrant family seeking a better life in the United States and really to follow the American dream. And 42 years later, we operate 42 stores spanning from the Mexican border to Los Angeles County. We employ more than 6,000 associates, with the majority of them being of Hispanic descent, and most of those Mexican heritage. We are kind of unique. We're a family-owned organization and operated company comprised of 13 brothers and sisters and more than 50 second-generation family members strong. So it's kind of a unique ownership and a fun place to work from that perspective. A little bit about why we do this and why we're involved. First of all, I should disclose as Sheree said, I am a board member with WAFC, and I also serve as the education chair. And I get the pleasure to work with and support Sheree and all of her endeavors to further education and leadership in our industry. And Northgate, we're involved in this from the beginning, much like the way we founded our company 42 years ago. Don Miguel Gonzalez Sr. Founded this company on the premise that our marketplace was underserved. They didn't have, our Mexican community did not have a great place to shop. It was not warm and welcoming, and did not have the products and quality that they deserve. And, here we are 42 years later and 42 stores stronger, kind of operating on the same premise, but we've broadened it to not just our consumer base, but to our associate base. And we want to make sure that we surround our associates with, really great education, every opportunity to succeed. And so we've done that in a lot of different ways. We've started our own foundation that is awarded millions of dollars in community and associate scholarships. And it's also why I serve, and our president of our company serve on the board of WAFC to help further education and be a part of these kinds of programs.
Mike, I got a question. I want to jump in. The frontline workers that you have, adult population across the country, often have very low literacy levels in math and reading. And I was wondering, how hard is it for your low level learners to get the certificate and participate in these kind of programs?
Well, to be honest with you, it's very easy to participate. In fact, Sheree has helped spearhead the RMCP program throughout the years and remove a lot of obstacles. It is next to free to participate. So we all offer scholarships and ways to do reimbursement of the education. We provide, it's 100% online now, so that it is very flexible, so that folks can attend at their leisure at different hours. But to be honest with you, one of the reasons why we're here today is because we had really identified opportunities, said, we've made it easy, we've made it free. We were encouraging people to do it, but there were still obstacles. We were still finding that, hey, we still didn't have enough people enrolled in it that we really would like to have enrolled. No. So we started really peeling back the onion, and we found that there were some obstacles, and two of which are, English as a second language, and being able to get, very comfortable in starting back to school, and as well, the digital divide, making sure people felt very comfortable on a computer or some type of device where they could start to get comfortable, navigate, and be able to participate and take classes online.
Wow, I love this, and you guys are already hitting a theme that we just have continuously on the podcast, which is this integration of the digital and oftentimes the English as a second language. I think what we're seeing is kind of these things just coupled together as kind of a necessity as we kind of think about how we provide language programming for members of our community. I love what's going on over at Northgate. I'm here in San Antonio now. I'm wondering, like, how can we get some of these over here in San Antonio, and really love the focus and the embrace on the training piece. I want to dig a little bit more into the English language learner population over there at Northgate. This is a group of workers that typically have less upskilling options at businesses. So I first want to applaud you for these efforts. I find it fascinating. You've got this enlightened perspective on upskilling in the retailing and grocery sector. But I want to bring Kathy on and have her tell us, with you, Mike, you can surely chime in here, but tell us a little bit more about the focus of how you began the program in terms of reaching that English language learner population. And why did you make the decision to start offering English instruction to your team members?
Sure. I mean, honestly, for us, it goes back to, most importantly, the legacy I think that the Gonzalez family has set forth. We have a very strong core value of education and development. So everything that we do goes back to keeping our people first, and how can we give them the opportunities? How can we enrich their lives? And that is such a strong theme in our company, set forth by the Gonzalez family. And we really try to live by that. We feel like we have a breadth of programs, not only English as a second language, but We have a wide variety of programs that we offer, but honestly, the kind of the reason why is really back to that core value. So it's kept front and center for everybody across the organization. And as Mike mentioned, then it's also supported by our foundation.
Fantastic. And I'm sure it pays off in your kind of retention and your kind of being able to promote from within and really build people's capacity. It's funny, we have a very large grocery chain here in Texas called HEB. I'm sure you heard of it. They win awards all the time. One thing I always notice about HEB is these workers stay for years in these stores. You know, you'll see them bagging groceries, then they're at the register, and then all of a sudden they're managing, or they're working in a specialty section. And I know it seems like you guys also have this embrace of really retaining, but also really investing in the training and education, no matter the level of the worker. So I really want to applaud you on that. So as you began kind of on this, reaching into the English language learner population in your stores, like who were your early partners? How did you start that? Was it always something you did online, or did you just begin in one store? Kind of tell us a little bit about the origin story.
Sure. Honestly, it was with the WAFC as a great partner. And as we partnered with a community college, a local community college, we grew that partnership, who then introduced us to the possibility of offering ESL. And so that really was the beginning of our partnership. And we continue to have some partnerships with the community colleges as well to really help us with this particular endeavor with ESL.
Fantastic. Well, let me ask Sheree a question real quick here then. So in your role with Western Association of Food Chains, like how common is this approach that we see with Gonzalez Market? Is this something, are they kind of the maverick and everybody is just oohing and ahhing over like what they're accomplishing? Or has there been like kind of some folks that have said, hey, if they can do it, we can tackle something like this for that English language learner population also?
Well, I think we have an English language learner population in every single grocery chain across America, especially because the barriers to entry are so low to get a job. But when we try to promote people and they are struggling with that English proficiency with customers and with their peers, we really want to be intentional about helping them get ESL, English as a second language. And, Kathy's right. They really were a maverick in jumping in and really looking into how can a community college partner with us or other adult basic education groups. But the traditional ESL, we've always struggled with that because there are different barriers. Like you have to drive to a location, and here I've got kids and I've got a life, and a business is 24/7. You have to have a certain number of people in the class. You're not learning words and phrases that really meet your needs every day on the job. So when we became aware of this very special contextualized ESL called English at Work, that really has been created exactly for a grocery store environment, it became a game changer, but it's still really in a pilot mode. And we have so many employers that want to do it and are jumping in, even in the pilot.
Fantastic. Well, this is so encouraging to hear, and the scale is impressive. And I want to bring on Anna from the National Immigration Forum. So, Anna, you're getting well prepped by your team here, and the listeners are probably saying, "Okay, what is this English at Work? I want to hear more about this." So, Anna, before you get into the English at Work, I want to first have you tell us a little bit about the forum, the National Immigration Forum. How is it that a policy and advocacy organization in Washington, D.C. got involved with grocers in California? Like, how does this fit together? Help me out here.
Yeah, sure. I love telling the story. So for those who are not familiar with us, the National Immigration Forum is a nonprofit, nonpartisan policy and advocacy shop on Capitol Hill, actually. And we advocate for the value of immigrants and immigration to the nation. And the forum's approach is quite unique in the immigration space. because it engages constituencies that are not typically reached by other immigration advocates, to make sure that we have a balanced and constructive immigration debate. And one of these constituencies is business. And specifically, our team looks to engage employers who recognize the value of their immigrant workforce and want to support them by joining in our advocacy efforts, or by providing some of the tangible immigrant inclusion programs that we offer. And one of these programs is English at Work, which is our contextualized English language training for the worksite. As far as how we got to work with grocery in California, Sheree and I connected through the Retail Opportunity Network, which is a community of practice of organizations providing workforce development solutions to the retail industry. And this was funded by the Walmart Foundation a few years back. And I guess once upon a time in the breakout room, we talked about the work that we each do and how it addresses the industry needs. And we realized that there were so many synergies between our work. We also had some philanthropic funding to serve immigrant workers in California. So it was really worth exploring an industry partnership to support these talented workers, right? To continue their education, to move up to fill management roles. And Sheree and Mike already talked about this by offering English at Work on-ramp to the retail management program.
Fantastic. Well, it's so unique. I mean, I love the vertical integration, a policy advocacy organization on Capitol Hill that's also providing direct services to immigrants and refugees. It's really adventurous, and definitely applaud the National Immigration Forum for really thinking that way. You just do not see that with policy groups that are out there actually providing a direct service like that. So, at its core, you guys are not an educational institution. So I'm still thinking, okay, how does this work? So tell us a little bit more about English at Work. I know it's an online program, but it's got live instructors. I love that combination, and it works great for businesses. But tell us more about English at Work.
Yeah, it might seem adventurous, but for us, it was really a no-brainer. So I think before I'll talk about the program, I'm going to very briefly share the English at Work story, which starts about 7-8 years ago when we were already partnering with hundreds of businesses across the country to provide naturalization services through our New American Workforce program. But then we realized that there weren't any easy English language learning solutions that can serve these employers and their employees well. So we did a lot of research, and we enlisted top ESL experts and immigrant education experts. And we started connecting this research to practice with a goal to build a robust, effective, and sustainable English solution for the workplace. And we knew this was imperative because, as we hear here today and, all the time nowadays, U.S. employers increasingly rely on immigrant workers. In fact, it's estimated that virtually all of the growth in the U.S. workforce over the next 40 years will come from immigrants and their children. Right. So it's critical that we have, that we together provide these workers with the tools and opportunities to gain the skills that allow them to fulfill their full potential. And that, of course, also helps employers fill jobs at various skill levels. And, Mike and Sheree and Kathy articulated this so well earlier. So as a result, we developed this first of its kind holistic English language learning solution for businesses that blends live instruction with online independent learning to build both language and digital skills, both of which are key to being successful at work and in daily life. right? And the live instruction can be delivered in person or remotely. Our fully remote model was actually created pre-pandemic, well before it was cool or a necessity, I should say, because we realized that it's what it takes to scale and it's what our workforce needs, right? And English at Work is a turnkey solution, easy to implement for employers. So we try to not put them to work because we know that their plates are already full and their priority is running their business, right? So we make it very easy for them to do this, and we give them all the tools and support they need to get this off the ground. And Northgate had already tried English, but we've partnered with other companies successfully who had no experience with English upskilling. And they are now into their 7th year of offering English at Work successfully to their workforce. It's contextualized, highly relevant to jobs, day-to-day duties, and can be further customized to each company's operations. And we currently serve 7 industries, and our content is all built around the competencies needed for each of these sectors, right? So, for example, in retail, we'll have a focus on building language to deliver great customer service. In manufacturing, we focus on adhering to good manufacturing practices, right? Across all industries, we build language to enhance safety and team communication and problem solving and so on.
Wow, this is impressive and a dream come true for a lot of our listener businesses that are looking for something that meets all these kind of dimensions of convenience, of effectiveness, of connectivity with real instructors. So I definitely have to applaud your work there and National Immigration Forum for really the backing and kind of vision to bring something like this forward. And hey, I love your line, online is cool and a necessity if you ask me. So I'm going to use that one in the future here. But I really love, one thing I noticed talking to businesses is, our team here from California is coming from a state that's been, working with immigrants for hundreds of years, just like for me in Texas. It's kind of our main population. But a lot of areas of the country, the immigrant populations are 20, 30 years in the community, sometimes newer than that. And so businesses just, we're fortunate that we have resources like English at Work that businesses can immediately, snap into that are convenient and they can connect because, they really need something quick to kind of remain buoyant and really remain in business sometimes because of, as you said, this changing labor market in terms of the future workforce and that net growth in the workforce. So just love all these pieces being put together for the businesses. So I want to turn it back to Mike and Sheree. Now, Anna described something that seems like a best-in-class option for English upskilling. What has been the response to English at Work for employees and their managers? And Kathy, you can chime in on this too. I'd love to hear you kind of from your perspective of introducing it to workers and hearing, how does it work? And then what do their managers say about it?
I'll start, and you guys feel free to jump in, but I'll start by saying, Anson, when we introduced this to our teams, we took it to several of our functional areas. Our operations team is by far our largest team, right? That's comprised of our store teams, right? That are working in our retail stores. And it was really super well received. Everybody was really open arms on, hey, we see the value in this. And really, we positioned it as a way to also identify sort of up-and-comers, right? Like people that want to take their own development very seriously and want to progress with the company and maybe want to move into the next level of responsibility, but maybe they're a little shy. Maybe they're working in a production department and maybe they've just never got a chance to get out behind the counter and start interfacing, and maybe they've been having a confidence level or issue there with language. So we tried to take that approach where we said, hey, let's find some folks here that are interested in that fashion. And then and in doing that, we had just such a great receptivity to a lot of our leaders saying, yeah, I've got people that would really fit that mold and would like to, continue to develop themselves. And then I know Kathy was kind of on the front lines of dealing with with all of our leaders and trying to get people, enrolled and all that. Kathy, do you have something to add?
I would say one of the things that we did, and it was a conscious decision to open it up to the entire organization. We really wanted to get the word out there about this program, the benefits, and ultimately what it could help, what it could lead to, because we've seen the retail management certificate program in action, and we know what great results we get out of that program. So we wanted to really see, to Mike's point, how much of a response we would get, and we have just been really pleasantly surprised, just thrilled with the number of folks that have come forward for the program.
Kathy, I got a question for you. You talk about the buy-in, and isn't this really a culture change? I mean, don't you really need to change the culture of the company and support it from the top all the way up to the top? And the president of the company and everybody else, all the management owners, really need to buy in and understand how important it is for the company. And then once that happens, then you start seeing everyone down the chain begin to fall in line. And I applaud your company because it seems like you've done it. And I'm just trying to understand, like, what's the magic sauce? Like, what does it take other companies? We have employers all over the country listening to us, hopefully millions of them. And I'm curious, like, what is it that those companies need to know to start engaging in the same kind of practice that you guys have done?
I would say, Jeffrey, it does have to come from the top. And we are blessed at Northgate that it is coming from the top. And this core value was laid long before my time. And so, when I joined Northgate, I came into an organization that was already rich in education and development. So that definitely has been a blessing. But I would say getting your stakeholders involved up front is really important. To Mike's point, we talked to our operations partners. We shared with them what the benefits of this program would be, and they were on board with it because we couldn't have done it without our operations partners, just from a scheduling perspective and just getting people where they needed to be to, participate in this program.
So I want to ask, we own, the company I work for owns a technical college here in Philadelphia. So we need you guys to come east. So we're waiting for that. We'll bring the truck so you guys can come over east to us because we don't have enough of this here on the East Coast. But we own a technical college. And one of the things we're really insistent about is that there be some stackability to a credential. Mm-hmm. That, I spoke at SHRM conference not long ago, and the best line that got applause was entry level today just doesn't cut it for our country. Like, we need to be thinking about doing more in that career pathway. And I'm wondering, what does this lead to for a lot of the participants that are going through this kind of a program? Is there stackability? Is there another credential that they can go to? How does that work?
That's probably my wheelhouse. We wanted to make sure that the retail management certificate begins a pathway to degree. So every single credit that students receive, it's about 24 semester credits that leads to an associate degree, and then the associate degree leads to bachelor's degrees. We've established that entire pathway with universities that can operate on a national scale, that even offer scholarships specifically for retail management certificate graduates. So the vision from the very beginning was to help people move forward in their careers. But what happens is people raise their hand asking for this community college opportunity to do that. And then they find out that they can be successful academically as well. So, we have people who have earned master's degrees. We even have a couple of PhDs that are now teaching in the program after they started out. And, we can get your technical college on board.
Love it.
Fantastic. I just love this. First off, we've got this pathway starting with the ESL piece, that Anna was so eloquent on and kind of talking about English at work. But the thing too that is ringing in my mind here as real important is I know years ago I was working with the National Retail Federation, and there was a number. Somebody here probably knows the number, but it was a staggering percentage of individuals whose first job is retail. It is this very large percentage of individuals out there that their first job in high school or something is in retail. But that it also has this kind of reputation sometimes as not being like a career growth opportunity. So now you're building that capacity by kind of stacking components that bring value all the way into the degree program. And I think that should be applauded, because a lot of people start in retail, they love it, but they get kind of stuck, and you kind of have this very large frontline piece and then this management track that's very small. And so you've built kind of different trajectories to branch out and to go in different areas in the retail and grocer sector. So I really want to applaud those efforts. And for our listeners out there that are in the retail sector, definitely listen to this podcast 2 or 3 times, because I think there's some good best practices that we're hearing in terms of how this thing was built, but also the scalability of it in a large retail group there in California. So I want to kind of take it back to that employer perspective and say, okay, some of the listeners are probably saying, wow, these folks are just fantastic. But Mike and Kathy, they may be thinking, fantastic, but how do I do this? It might seem like a huge thing to take on. What would your response be? Like, how would someone really take the baby steps, so to say, in getting involved in something like this?
Well, from my perspective, Kathy's will be different because she had to do all the hard work. But I know one of the things that was near and dear to Sheree and myself was, being able to pilot this, right? It's just getting started, and it doesn't have to be all encompassing, right? I mean, sometimes the best programs start small. You learn a lot, and you try to understand, okay, how do I, grow this into bigger success? And that's really where we are right now, frankly, is we want to start small. We're learning all the things like what is the best way to recruit people? How do you get them ready? How do you think about things like, how do you set up their schedules at work so that they can participate? Right. And how do you develop cohorts that can work together and help each other through the program? It's things like that I think it's all the little details. But again, it can be overwhelming if you try to boil the ocean and try to get it all done at the same time. But I think we're trying to take a more pragmatic approach here, start small, figure it out. And then, as we get that learning, because, we're continuing to get the learning, we're fresh into this.
Sure.
And we've only had our first cohort graduate. And then now some of them are starting down the path of the RMCP program. But, we're going to continue to learn and hopefully, grow this into a much bigger, widespread program. But like I said, that's my vantage point. Kathy had to do the super hard work, her and Sheree, as they were learning through it. But
it takes a team, Mike, for sure. It takes a village. It took our entire L&D team to be dedicated to this. And I think that's an important point because, we all jumped in at one point. I have one person that's dedicated to this program, but we all jumped in to help because we did, we wanted it to be successful. But I think an important thing to consider is gauging interest. And really understanding your audience, understanding your population and what their specific needs are. For us, it needed to be easy. We loved that it was contextualized and it needed to be online. So I think those are all important considerations, just really understanding what the needs are of your population.
That's wonderful to hear. And I love the fact, I think my question stems from the perspective that when we have listeners, sometimes they think they have to do this alone. And this is a great example, the 4 of you kind of teaming in different capacities to make something happen. And then there's others involved that aren't even on the podcast, of course. So if you're listening out there and you're thinking, like, oh, I'm the only person in HR that will do this, think broadly about who are some other partners that you can bring on. That's been kind of my experience all the time, because I tend to like to do things on my own. Like I want to be the one that's leading it and all this, but disciplining yourself to kind of get the team together and get situated. And then I love your vantage point of just listening to the workers. What do they need? What are the things that are going to be beneficial? Because they will vote with their feet if it's not meeting some of those requirements. And the fact that English at Work is contextualized for the industry online, all these things make it very, very attractive, I think, for that contest, just context. So I wanted to. I'm going to turn to Anna real quick, and the Northgate team can chime in on this too. But we've kind of bounced around the topic of the digital piece, and talked about it's online and all these kind of things. But some people listening may say, okay, well, wait a minute. I don't know if my workers, have digital access, or how are we going to facilitate that? Or do we need to build a computer lab? Like, how do we do something that has this online component? So Anna, I want to ask you, like, you've seen, Northgate's story, and you've seen, them working through their graduating class. But a broader vantage point, like, how do those things get addressed with employers that you've worked with?
Yeah, so English at Work is available on any type of device. It could be a laptop, computer, tablet, smartphone. And we did that because early in the pilot, about 7 years ago, we learned that mobile accessibility is key to removing barriers like, internet access or even computer access. But for this particular project and pilot, we were fortunate to work with Sheree to design an additional on-ramp, or I should say a complementary on-ramp, to support participants with a digital literacy piece. Right. And that was with involving another nonprofit called Human IT, who provided both hardware and a digital literacy course to participants. That was a prerequisite to joining English at Work. And Sheree, I think you can chime in here, but we saw, some really great excitement around that, and people, completed their digital course. We think that was very helpful for them to feel more comfortable joining our platform. But then we also have our own digital literacy module that's embedded in our curriculum, because we know that some folks come with very low digital literacy skills. For some, this is their first time studying online. So we want to make sure that coming in, they have all the support they need to be successful. So I'll turn it over to Sheree to see if she has anything to add here.
Well, we did design the Human IT, the digital literacy, as a separate on-ramp, because we know we also have a lot of people in our workforce, especially in stores and in warehouses, who, and I think the statistic is around 40%, who might be considered digitally illiterate. But it is highly correlated with English proficiency as well. And so this complementary on-ramp of digital literacy as well as the English literacy, both always intentionally trying to help prepare people in our workforce to learn, read, write, take tests in English, which is what the community colleges require. So that's why these on-ramps are so critical and so fresh for our industry.
So what's kind of amazing, and so we had a show not long ago, if you remember, on the Digital Equity Act, which is coming into play, and would encourage all employers out there to start looking at their digital equity plan in their state to see what kind of relief and support they can get with programming to really build in a really strong, robust digital literacy program. Now that we're starting to work on the infrastructure and broadband access, which is always giving them laptop is one thing, accessing it maybe just another.
Right.
But it's great to hear that you've embedded that in the program.
Yeah, I like I mentioned at the top of the show, I think this coupling of the digital and the English is it's kind of needs to be the default when it comes to kind of English language learning, because there's just so much now in terms of access that you're locked out of if you're not digitally competent. Can't get into English at work, but you can't also, you have to take a day to go get your driver's license renewed when you could do it online. Voter registration, looking at your child's report card at school, getting your pay stub at work. I mean, these are kind of fundamental rights that we think of, and it's almost hard to believe sometimes that people are locked out of that. We can't imagine that kind of a world, but it's as you said, Sheree, very large percentages, and the Digital Equity Act that has come up on several of our episodes. Actually, we had Amanda Burks and Chilcott from National Skills Coalition talking very eloquently about it. She's really been leading that charge nationally. But I think this is really great, because one of the things that the states are looking at as they receive these federal funds from the Infrastructure Act is, okay, money's here. We've got partners that are interested. What are we going to do with it? Like, what is the vehicle? And that's where I think these kind of relationships. And one thing I wanted to mention, I love that the association is involved, because that's this multiplier effect. And we've got associations in everywhere: construction, healthcare, manufacturing. Every community has, a local business association, sector specific, and then, not every community, but many of them do. And then, of course, states and nationally. So it's good to see that a good idea like English at work, like the certification, can be brought in, and then you've got hundreds of interested employers, dozens of them, depending on the association, that are your kind of market that can kind of see how their peers are implementing. And so I really encourage listeners that are in associations or working with associations or leading associations to really think about how they could bring these kind of ideas to the forefront. Jeff, you had mentioned just speaking to SHRM the other day, the Society for Human Resource Management. Wonderful organization to bring things like this, and I'm so glad they had you speak at it. So we're, believe it or not, the hour goes fast. We're rounding the corner here, and I wanted to just ask everyone if they could kind of make a suggestion at the end here, when they think of, or not everyone, but whoever would like to offer up some ideas on that employer that's listening and saying, by golly, I'm doing this. What would their next big step be? Like, should they go talk with management? Probably. But should they go talk to workers? Should they do some needs assessment? Do they need to do some research online? I'm giving you all the answers here, but I'm sure you've got better ones than I do. What would you recommend as a good next step for someone that's going to be listening to go out and take this step?
I can start.
Yeah.
I think an important thing, as I mentioned earlier, gauge interest. Yeah. Find a way to talk to your associates one-on-one, because what happens is our frontline associates don't always feel comfortable coming forward. And I think you have to figure out a way to get one-on-one. And what we did is we, again, dedicated one person that could help socialize the information with our store team leaders. And then they were able to cascade the information down to their populations. So, we're fortunate enough, we have a channel with our leaders, and we cascade information down that way. And that seems to help us. But your leader population of our frontline associates have to be on board. So you might want to consider getting in their ear and talking about benefits and the great outcomes that come from a program like this.
Fantastic. Great points. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just say from, I'm going to kind of take it up a level where this sort of the genesis of this started. And again, Sheree and I were thinking long and hard about, well, we have these great programs, and all of our member retailers have these great programs. And I think often employers fall into this trap where you have the programs and you kind of check the box and think, okay, I've done that. Great, I'm moving on. And but I think the real work comes when you kind of look in the mirror and you say, how are we doing? Are we successful? Is it enough? Is it making an impact, right? And I think that's where we got here is we said, no, we're not, right? Like, we're not going deep enough, that we can do better than this. There are reasons why people maybe haven't fully adopted or taken advantage of all the great things we have available. So I guess, my words of wisdom might be to just step back, do that needs assessment, take a look at what's working and what's not. And oftentimes employers have great programs, but there are those small details, and in this case, maybe big things that are preventing people from taking advantage of it. So I would do that needs assessment and get your people excited for it, because good things happen when you do it.
Fantastic. Anyone else?
Well, I would just add, I think it is critical to take a step back and really ask ourselves, what are we doing for this portion of our workforce that, Anson, to your point, has been effectively locked out? We don't realize and we don't know that all of the programs we have available to our workforce are not really equity. It's not equitable. It may be equal, that everybody could access it if they want to. But if we haven't removed some of these barriers, like the digital literacy, the access to a computer, someone helping pay for it, and then English at work to make sure they can learn in English, that's 30-40% of our workforce that we haven't taken care of.
Yeah.
And so those are two. When we started working with the leadership at the Western Association of Food Chains and discussing this, it was a no-brainer that we need to be doing this. They really didn't even need to do a deep dive of research to know we got to change this.
Wow, I love that. Anna, okay, so aside from everyone going and checking out English at Work at the National Immigration Forum, what recommendation would you have for that employer out there that's thinking about this?
Yeah, I mean, I really I would encourage them to talk to their employees and find out what their goals and aspirations are, because employees are really hungry to learn language and grow. And I think it's important for employers to know this and to know that, there's a lot of English language solutions out there. They have to do their research and figure out which one is best for them, right? But also understand that English is not easily accessible, right? And English language acquisition takes time for adults. So it must be very intentional, very purposeful, right? Because it will lead to incredible outcomes for these individual employees. And, it's like a boost in their morale and self-esteem and the desire to grow and earn higher wages and so on. So it's really like a ripple effect that we see with every employer, right? I really encourage them to look at this with the equity lens as well, right? Because language powers, yes, it powers all aspects of our daily life, work, family, civic participation, but it also powers opportunities and career growth. And most importantly, it powers dignity and equity. So it's very important to think about it that way.
I love all those points. Just fantastic. And, one thing that came to mind from the comments, and Sheree, you had mentioned something related to this, but, for the listeners that maybe managing something like the retail management certification, or a related certification program, I know one thing that, we continually hear from certification programs as well as, college programs is, enrollment's low, or, we wish we could get out of single digits. We need to get dozens, not, my message is always, well, let's broaden that base of access by getting, the digital literacy and the English, and really tapping a broader base of talent to populate a certification program or populate a college program. And it, in some ways it's kind of a no-brainer, but people don't think of it. They think this is the level you have to go into the certification, and they don't think that there's some creative ways that you can kind of build that base of potential customers. Well, this is fantastic.
Anson, I have an ask of everyone on this call. So you guys are all amazing. This is a wonderful program. This is But here's what we need. Here's what we need across the country is we need you to take all this great information, because you've done what I always say to my staff is, if you want to make something real, you got to make it a thing. You got to build it, right? And you got to test drive it, and you got to pilot and get it out there. But what we need now is we need to show that it works. And what I would hope that you do is take the data, take a look at how successful are you in doing all this. And you're going to be wildly successful, I'm sure, with it. But then you got to start writing it, and you got to start getting it out there so that other employers and other industries across the country can start taking heed of what's going on out there and follow suit. And that's the way change happens, by one great idea just spreading like wildfire. You have the great idea, you're doing the great work, and now we have to get it spreading, get people catching on all across the country. But congratulations, pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And we're going to be doing our part with the podcast, getting that word out, on the airwaves there. Okay, so we're going to break here and go into our lightning round. So I'm going to be coming back and having you guys charge the audience with something to go back and go do after listening to the podcast. So, Jeff, take us to the lightning round.
Yeah. Back.
All right, fantastic.
It's lightning time.
I was just updating my resume because now I can say that I've successfully facilitated a podcast with 4 guests all within 1 hour. So I'm really excited about that. Had to add that to my credentials here because I was worried about it. I knew this was going to have a lot of great information. But yeah, I want to go through and everyone here. A challenge to the listeners out there, and I'm going to start with Anna. So, Anna, challenge our listeners to go take this information, listen to this, and what are you going to challenge them to go do?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk to employers in particular and say that we at the forum, we are very mission driven, and we'd like them to join us in this shared mission and in creating a movement among businesses to take action and support their immigrant workforce today, right? Because this doesn't only benefit them as individual, but it's the right thing to do. And we also heard Mike and Kathy, it's also good for business, right? It benefits the company bottom line, but also the communities it's part of and the economy as a whole. So we're looking for employers like Northgate Market who really want to position themselves as strategic leaders in this movement and are ready to invest in upskilling, think creatively about their offerings and long-term goals to include English training. And I urge them to look for solutions that are not just checking the box, but that result in quality outcomes for employees and that will make a tangible impact in their lives.
Fantastic. And I love that. I just love that. And before I let you go, tell us, how can we find English at Work?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You can go to our website and find the contact form there, immigrationforum.org, or you can email us at english@immigrationforum.org.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to turn over to Mike. Challenge our audience here with a lightning round charge.
I guess I would say, this is very doable within your organization. Don't feel like you're in it by yourself. I think, Anson, you said, I'm the same way. Sometimes you get challenged with something, you feel like you got to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
I think most of the employer organizations out there have people in a lot of different functional areas that are willing to participate and help and forge this forward. I know Kathy leads our learning and development team, but it wasn't only by themselves. They had help of our operations team, ourselves, and a lot of other folks to help put this together. So it's doable. Don't feel like you're in it by yourself, and leverage the talents of your organization to make this happen.
Fantastic. Kathy, let's turn to you.
Yes, I would say start your business case. And by that can seem big, but just take that next step. That next step could be gauging interest, listening to the hearts of your associates and responding in that way. And I think the biggest part of that, is just figuring out and explaining to your executive level teams, to your other business partners, the benefits and what it will do to business. Because when you can explain that portion of it, to me, it's nobody can deny the benefits. So it's start your business case.
Oh, fantastic. Sheree.
I honestly believe that what we're doing and what we're talking about today is a moral imperative. I believe that we have so many people in our industries across the nation who need access to programs like English at Work, computer literacy, so that they can move into academic programs that in the US require them to speak English. So my call to action would be that for everybody who's listening, no matter what functional area of your companies or associations or education institutions you're from, let's get together in this and let's do what Anson said. And what Jeff said. Let's spread the word and make it a bold statement about what we need to do to support the people on the front line who've been locked out of opportunity.
Oh, bold and really, really, really beautiful sentiment there. I love that. My charge is really to associations or individuals that are parts of associations to get the topic of English language learners, of digital literacy on the agenda for your next meeting, and talk about that and get that conversation going in that group setting. Someone in the room is going to be doing something about it. And then you can get a discussion going about how to scale something in your community. So if you're an association or a lead in an association, let's get that on the agenda there. Jeff, what do you got?
Yeah, I got a simple one. 4 words, make it a thing. Just make it a thing. These things happen because we go out and we take an action step and we make them real. And start with a pilot, start small, start with a small cohort, make it a thing, and you're going to see how much of an impact you can make.
All right. Well, fantastic. Well, this has been a fantastic podcast. I want to thank our guest. We'll be putting your contact information in the show notes so the listeners can go find you out there. And let's wrap this thing up, Jeff. It's been a great show.
Thanks, Anson. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Behind Every Employer podcast with your hosts, Anson Green and Jeffrey Abramowitz. This podcast has been brought to you by the Coalition on Adult Basic Education and NGen, a career-focused virtual English language platform for organizations and employers working with immigrants and refugees. Listen to the Behind Every Employer podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and you can find us at coabe.org. If you'd like to reach Behind Every Employer podcast, you can do so at behindeveryemployer@coabe.org.